City Council meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Alderwoman Ames. Alderman Catalano.
Here.
Alderman Currielli. Alderman Messina.
Here.
Alderman Sismarski. Here. Alderman Hartwoods.
Here.
Alderman Hartwoods.
Here.
Mayor, please.
Here, I declare a quorum. Please stand and join the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first up, need a motion to approve the minutes of November 21st, 2024.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. Okay. Do any citizens wish to be heard on matters not listed on the agenda? Okay, we have none this evening. Go to City Manager's Report, Mr. Murmas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two reports. First one is the city's tree lighting is this Saturday, December 7th at 2 o'clock at City Hall. The evening will conclude with fireworks at 5 p.m. Portions of the event will take place outside, so please dress warm for the weather. And we encourage all guests to support local restaurants this year. Each visitor will receive a coupon for 10% off any participating restaurant. The restaurants in town that are participating this year are the Art Gallery Cafe, Bentley's Pancake House, Christie's Pancake House, JB's Inn, Juan Y. Yo Taco Grill, Parlay Bar, Taqueria Azteca, the Pizza Kitchen, Wendy's, White Cottage, and the local bar and grill. My second item, you can recycle your older non-working holiday lights now until January 30th. If you're interested in participating, drop them off at 720 North Central. That's our Public Works building. And by recycling them, you can prevent them from ending up in a landfill. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Nothing on the consent agenda. Committee chairman reports, planning and zoning, Alderman Catalano.
Yes, I have one, Mayor. I have one, Mayor. It's a resolution approving the agreement for consultant services with the Self-Built for the purpose of the city building code review and updates. That is my motion.
Second. Okay, we have a second. Motion and a second. Any questions? Roll call.
Alderman Catalano.
Yes.
Alderman Hartwoods.
Yes.
Alderman Messina.
Yes.
Alderman Sismarski.
Yes.
Alderman Hartwoods.
Yes.
Okay, and that passes. Okay. That concludes your report?
Yes. That concludes my report, Mayor.
Thank you. And under Public Health and Safety, Alderman Hartwoods?
Oh, I'm up. Jeez.
No report.
No report.
Thank you.
Sleeping.
Next, Public Works, Alderman Artie Woods.
No report, Mayor.
Thank you. Finance and Administration, Alderman Messina.
I have three reports, Mayor.
Go ahead.
First one is an ordinance authorizing the levy and collection of taxes for the corporate and municipal purposes of the city of Wooddale, DuPage County, Illinois, for the fiscal year commencing May 1st, 2024, and ending April 30th, 2025. That was my motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Questions? Alderman Woods, Art Woods.
Mr. Wilson, so what's the, I know that this, over the years, has been touched upon before, but what if we don't up the levy, go for the increase? What was,
Go ahead, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just before I answer, so you're talking just from a pure levy standpoint, a budgetary impact standpoint, like what?
Alderman Woods.
general standpoint,
Okay,
and then going into the budgetary?
sure. So if we were to not do, well, I guess you can't not do a levy, right? So
Correct, we just would
Yeah.
levy for,
for the increase, yeah.
For the
So if you were to say, we're not going to do the 4.99 this year, we want it to be 0, then it would be the exact same levy as it was last year, would be repeated this year. And then the reality is then that 5% or 4.9%, it's going to be less than that based on what CPI was, but based upon the PTEL. But then that money, I guess, you can never get it back, I guess. It's like you can't then next year say, oh, well, we want to get that 2.3% back next year plus the 1.9% for next year's levy. So from a compounding standpoint on the levy, it would just be gone. So we'd still just do the same levy, but that money just from a mathematical compounding standpoint would be gone forever.
Right, so if I'm not mistaken, that was like between 30 and 50,000 were the increase unless there was some new build or whatever. I remember I brought this up years ago and I said, why don't we just skip 1 year? And some of the response I heard, I don't know if it was one of the senators or maybe you, Mr. Wilson. So we wouldn't get our $1 or $2 per house or whatever, maybe $3, depending what it is, depending on the house. But the other taxing bodies would get more than they would, because wasn't it like 2.1 or something? Everybody gets, I remember you saying something, somebody told me something. I remember we had a quick discussion, but then we passed the levy, so I'm just curious. Do you remember that? That was years ago. I'm talking probably 8 years ago.
Yeah, I don't remember specifically, but I mean, each taxing body's levy is their levy. So if we were to, not increase, and it's about 220,000, the proposed levy, by the time it goes through the process, it's going to be less than that based upon what the
Wait,
the
220,000?
218,061, based on my number here.
Go ahead, Alderman Woods.
That's the math that I came up with was 218,061, $218,061. But going back to my question before, because I think some of that stuff was different than what we were talking about that the mayor brought up. So wouldn't there be an increase anyway because the property values went up? Even so, if our percentage stayed the same, but the values went up, wouldn't we get an increase?
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, so if we levy if we levy the 3.7 million, which was last year's final levy, that's what we're going to collect. Individual homes may or may not pay more based upon how their values have changed within that. It's like if, residential home values are appreciating quicker than businesses, so the mix might change a little bit. But if we levy the 3.7 million, that's all we're going to get is 3.7 million.
But do we?
Go ahead.
So we levy a dollar amount, not a percentage?
Not a millage, correct.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and we, just for
Go ahead.
clarification, the rate, we back into the rate based upon the dollar amount
Gotcha.
divided by the AV, so.
Gotcha. And if I could
Go ahead,
follow
follow.
up, so to back up to that, then that 218, what would the impact to the budget be?
Go ahead, Mr. Wilson.
218,000. Yeah. So I guess it really depends on, the ultimate impact. It depends on what else is going into the budget this year, the tail end of next fiscal year, which this is a next week conversation. There's the grocery tax that's, going away or not going away, depending on what the council decides to do. Going to be offset by CIT coming online, and then in a couple of years, the data centers coming online and the utility tax. So in the immediate future, it'd be 218,000 that we would have to, budget around for this next year. And then, like I said, obviously that would be 218,000 that would be out of the block of available funding going forward. So it would just be something we'd have to budget around and budget for going forward each of those next few years.
Follow?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So part of the reason I'm asking is, one, it would be nice to give relief, but the other is we keep talking about the other revenue streams that we get, and those are increasing, whether it's more stuff coming in through the water department or TIFs being able to take over all these city projects. At some point, I would think that we could afford some relief. So that's where the line of questioning is coming from. So would that be more feasible, being that a year from today, or?
Yeah, so, I think we were talking about it, I mentioned it, and you were, when the data centers come online, if in fact, I mean, they're saying, estimating 400,000 in utility tax, or
Is that per building?
per building, right. And some people are saying as much as 800,000. I'll believe the 400,000 when I see it. That's how I'm like anticipating, well, if we're making that much money, we should be able to give something back to the residents. And we'll see, CIT's coming online finally, and a few other things. Right. And honestly, that's discussion for another night, because I know we're going to get a lot of legal questions. I know he's going to start telling me stuff. Go ahead, Alderman Woods.
Yeah, so going back to what you just said with the buildings and the data centers, so 400,000 a building, how many buildings are going to be? Five?
Five.
7?
Five.
So that's
$2 million.
$1 billion. So yeah, I think somehow weaving in projects, it's not a direct correlation, right? Because we can't use that money for everything, right? That's part of the issue. But we could offset some of the projects through creative writing, much like the person that wrote the ordinance. But, okay, thank you.
Mr. Wilson, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I would just say that I would agree. I think that, when those buildings come online, I think that'd be probably a more appropriate time to have that conversation. But yeah, I think it's something that, it's on the radar, I would say, for sure.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get the spark going.
I'm surprised 200, I remember maybe the way things are, maybe things were, valuations weren't going up as much, but I remember having this conversation, it has to be at least 8-10 years ago. I remember somebody told me, well, we only get an extra 30,000 or 50,000 per year, but now it's gone up to 200,000? Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, so the 5% is 200,000 based on the PTEL. We know what CPI is going to be. It's not going to be.
But that's if we get the full 5%. Because if I'm not mistaken, when I asked you for that stuff, you showed me, because I get a lot of TIF questions, right? And it was like 2.1% only. Is that correct, right? So we only getting 2.1, everybody got like 2.1% a couple years in a row, I think was the average. So it's not the full 5.
Yeah, so the PTEL, the Property Tax Extension Limitation Law, states that we get the lesser of CPI or 5%.
Right.
So a couple years ago, CPI was 8, we still only got 5, because that's what it's capped at. And this, I don't remember the exact number, but I think it's somewhere in the 2.3, 2.8 range is what they're saying CPI was. So that's realistically exclusive of new growth, and the non-cap funds, what we're probably going to get out of the levy.
So then the number would actually only be half of the 208, be 100,000.
Correct, yeah.
And I know we had this conversation, we're probably getting off topic, but can you just give it to homeowners, or some people rent? And I know that's where we're gonna get into the legal questions. We won't do that tonight. So, okay. Any other questions? Okay. Roll call.
Alderman Messina?
Yes.
Alderman Sismarski?
Yes.
Alderman Catalano?
Yes.
Alderman Artwoods?
Yes.
Alderman Artie Woods?
Yes. Okay, and that passes.
And then next, an ordinance abating the taxes heretofore levied for the year 2024 to pay debt service on $9,250,000, general obligation general obligation bonds, alternate revenue source, Series 2020, $6,290,000, general obligation refunding bonds, alternate alternate revenue source, Series 2020B, and $14,315,000 general obligation bonds, alternate revenue source, Series 2021, of the City of Wooddale, DuPage County, Illinois. That would be my motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Question on this one? Roll call.
Alderman Messina.
Yes.
Alderman Catalano.
Yes.
Alderman Sismarski.
Yes.
Alderman Artwoods.
Yes.
Alderman Artie Woods.
Yes. And that passes?
And finally, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds, alternate revenue source, Series 2025, of the City of Wooddale, DuPage County, Illinois, in an aggregate principal amount of not to exceed $10 million for the purpose of financing the cost of certain capital projects within the city and paying for costs related thereto, and providing for the levy of a direct annual tax sufficient to pay the principal of and interest on said bonds. That would be my motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Questions? Alderman Woods.
So, on there it says, cost of capital projects. What capital projects are we doing with that money?
Mr. Wilson.
So capital projects in this particular scope is a broad phraseology for work being done within the TIF. So it could be land acquisition with the TIF, it could be site, not site development, but site works, things of that nature. So it's a broad
Go ahead, follow up.
phraseology.
I mean, this is for the land, right?
Correct.
Why don't we just say for land acquisition?
Mr. Bond, go ahead.
Well, it gives some flexibility if there's other things that need to be done as part of that. So it's kind of a big general category as opposed to the specific item. So it just gives additional flexibility to the city.
Go ahead, you've got to follow up because I got to follow up.
But my understanding was there is no extra money, so this is its only purpose.
And that's the way I see it, and personally, we should be able to sunset it once we've paid it off, right? But who's going to answer that? Once we pay off so we borrowed $8 million, the $10 million is for the interest and everything else, right? So once we pay it off, we can close the TIF. There's no other site work on that property for us to do. Correct, Mr. Wilson?
There's two questions, I guess I'll go there, then there.
Okay,
So,
go ahead. You could,
He outranks me, so he...
no, it's all right, whatever.
So to your point, that's probably the easier answer. Yes, and so part of the JRB report for TIF 3 and TIF 4 both stated that when the obvious liabilities of those TIF districts were paid off, that we would look to close those out as soon as reasonably and feasibly possible. So to your point, yeah, once this $8 million is paid off, we would...
With interest.
Yeah. We would, more than likely look to close those out much sooner than the 23-year time period.
Right.
To that end, the bonds, the way the deal is being set up is there's going to be a call provision in there so that we can call the bonds early and then pay them off to fees them and then close out the TIFs. So that is the working plan as of now. And then, to Alderman Wood's question, yeah, I mean, it was for the land acquisition, the money that was given to Cyrus One, that's correct. Again, the bond attorneys and the TIF attorney, when they wrote this up, that's how they wrote it up in a more general term and phraseology.
Creative writing classes kicked in.
Right.
Yeah, then.
It's AI.
Then a finite, but I mean, that's, to your point though, that's what this reimbursement is for. Yes,
Right.
you are correct.
So
Go ahead,
I
follow up.
I just wanted to make sure there wasn't something
No,
I was
that's-
missing. But, so my follow-up question to that is, based on what we're saying, and my constant questioning of this is there is no benefit to the resident. I mean, four parts removed down the road, maybe. But we just talked about possibly being able to reduce the real estate tax by offloading some of the projects that would be able to be covered under the TIF, but we're saying we're going to close the TIFs altogether, which would then eliminate that as an option. Is that what we just said?
So were you saying keep the TIF open longer to do projects? Is that, I think that's what you're asking, right? Is that
Well, so
to do infrastructure?
typically, right,
projects?
we've sat up here and went with, that money's coming from the TIF district, whether it's the water tower or some other major public works project. So as long as the vehicle's there and there's some benefit to the residents, right? This benefit, I say is for somebody other than them, but we won't get into that. Why wouldn't we want to avail ourselves to use some of that?
Mr. Wilson?
Sure, so obviously as we get closer to that point, we'll look at that and see what makes sense. And I guess I would say that a lot of the stuff that we've done so far, you know, the Public Works Campus, the lift station, the water tower, whatever, there's nexus between TIF 1 and those projects. With TIF 3 and 4, with the Cyrus 1 data centers and the ComEd substation being the only things that are on there, there's really not going to be any, at this time, any perceived nexus that we can reasonably think of at this moment that we would be able to utilize some of those funds on extraterritorial projects, which is different with TIF 1, just because of the nature of the growth and some of the projects in there. So there has to be nexus between the TIF and those projects. So, yeah, I mean, in 10 years, 8 to 10 years, when we're getting to that point, if there is some nexus there and some need, then we can certainly analyze that and look at, possibly going that route before closing them out. But right now, I'm unaware of what that is, but I'm not going to be, just blinded by that statement in 8 to 10 years. I mean, we'll certainly look at it, but it's really all about the nexus and what we can reasonably put together and as a benefit to the TIF from an extraterritorial standpoint. I don't know if Mr. Bond has anything else.
Go ahead, Mr. Do you want to say something? Because I get nervous when I hear nexus.
Well, the nexus has got to be, as Mr. Wilson indicated, you've got, the purpose of the TIF is to obviously generate the development of the property, which is underdeveloped, and then use that and pump it back into the others that are going to do improvements and so forth. With this is unique in that it's kind of a standalone, a one type of situation where there's not going to be other properties that would be in need of those, utilizing those funds for that.
Yeah, and this came up at the Shape of Wooddale, somebody asked that question. Honestly, once we paid off the loan and the interest, as far as the water towers being done to the north, treatment plant, they're not gonna really use a lot of water, so I don't see how we can do the south treatment plant with those TIF funds and things like that. I get nervous, there it is, nexus. Okay. Any other questions? Roll call.
Alderman Messina.
Yes.
Alderman Catalano.
Yes.
Alderman Sismarski.
Yes.
Alderman Artwoods.
Yes.
Alderman Hardy Woods.
Yes. That passes.
That concludes my report, Mayor.
Thank you. Under other business, nothing this evening. Approval of list of bills for December 5th. Alderman Messina.
No report, Mayor.
No, list of bills.
Oh, sorry, listen,
I'm with them, don't pay.
Don't pay anybody?
we don't need it, we don't need it.
Cheap tonight.
It's only $975,000. Approval for a list of bills dated December 5th, 2024, in the amount of $975,586.71. That would be my motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any questions on any of the bills? Alderman Artie Woods.
Just one quick one, the $5,800 for city desk chairs, is that part of the remodel, or are those chairs for the other side of City Hall, or?
Mr. Wilson?
Those are predominantly for this side of City Hall.
Okay, so that's not part of the police department
Correct,
remodel? Okay,
correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Alderman Art Woods.
Yeah, the rotunda doors, lobby revolving doors, wasn't that part of the construction project?
Mr. Wilson.
So the door, the one to the main parking lot, was actually broken one night by, I don't know, what do you say, an unhappy patron? Yeah, he broke the door. So that was something that was done, I guess, outside of the scope of it, because it wasn't had the unhappy resident not broken the door, then we wouldn't have had to repair that. So it was a repair so I guess another way to look at it is if the PD project wasn't going on, we still would have had to have fixed it because that person broke the door.
Follow, go ahead.
But are we gonna, weren't we in the scope gonna do some work to that door?
We were gonna fix the roofing and
Yeah,
stuff.
we don't-
I don't know.
Don't have to go down.
Do you know that?
Yeah, so
I don't know if you're-
the part of the door that was broken was, you know, you have the 4 panels, so it broke one of the springs holding one of the panels in place and the sprocket that allowed the door to spin. So that wasn't part of the scope that was voted on a couple weeks ago. That was to fix the roofing and some of the drainage and the drywall and things of that nature. But that sprocket and the spring to hold the door in place and the weather stripping, that was not part of the,
Okay, I thought there was some of that in there.
Any other questions?
Uh,
Go ahead.
Yeah, let's just go on, it's collectively, there's multiple, with the cell phone or cellular bills from multiple cellular companies for different things. Do we have a way to consolidate that to try to?
Mr.
reduce
Wilson?
costs? Some are T-Mobile, some are Verizon. Have we looked into that?
Go ahead.
I'd have to, perhaps defer to the IT Director Stenson a little bit.
Okay.
But I do know that the T-Mobile is for the non-police department phones. And then the police department, their phones are Verizon, and then they also have the Verizon mesh network for the in-car laptops and the air cards. So there's really 3 different things.
Right, and some said
practically going on.
alarms and other things like that. But
Yeah.
still looking at that, when you add up all those items screwing around the sheet, it's a significant number.
Sure.
So, all right, thank you.
Any other questions? Roll call.
Alderman Messina.
Yes.
Alderman Sismarski. Alderman Catalano.
Yes.
Alderman Artwoods.
Yes.
Alderman Hardy Woods.
Yes.
Okay, and that passes.
That concludes my report, Mayor.
Thank you. We need to adjourn into executive session for review of the minutes, land disposition, and pending litigation. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, we're adjourned into exec.